In this video, we're going to talk about the most important aspects of any recording studio setup. That includes you at home, if you're wanting to record anything that sounds halfway decent, as well as bigger, more professional spaces as well. I'm also going to pull back the curtain on what I'm running in my setup behind me, and hopefully give you some recommendations too. So let's dive in. Okay, so obviously you're going to need a computer. Now, you don't have to spend loads on this necessarily, but what you do need to do is make sure your current computer has got more power and memory than you need. And there's a couple of reasons for this. First of all, software, virtual instruments, and plugins in general are becoming more and more capable, but also more and more power and memory hungry. So if you're already at the limits of what your computer's capable of, it's probably not going to last you very much longer. And secondly, the last thing that you want is being interrupted when you're in the middle of your creative flow because your computer's frozen, crashed, or you've run out of memory. Whether you go with PC or Mac really doesn't matter. Just go with whatever you like and whatever suits you. I went for this upgraded Mac Studio. Yes, people will probably argue and tell me in the comments that you get more bang for your buck with PC, and they're probably right. Yes, they're expensive, and I'm constantly seeing the videos and the arguments of people speccing out a PC that's probably more powerful for less than half of the money. But I'm going to get at least 10 years out of this machine. And even then, it's probably going to still be worth a few hundred second-hand. This actually makes it really, really good value over the long term. And I'm not sure that you could say the same thing about PC. So now that we've got that out of the way, probably the next most important, but also pretty boring thing that you absolutely need to figure out is acoustic treatment for your room. You can have the absolute best equipment in the world, the best instruments, the best recording gear, but if your room sounds bad, that is absolutely going to ruin your recordings, ruin your productions, and also ruin your mixes too. Now, you have a ton of options when it comes to room treatment. You can buy a ton of bespoke made panels, ceiling clouds, and things like that can get pretty expensive. However, you know that they're going to be good, and you can also get consultation on designing what's best for your room. You could make these yourself much, much cheaper, and then be prepared to spend a bit of time experimenting on what needs to go where and where the treatment sounds the best. Or thirdly, if you're on a really tight budget, or the room that you're recording in, you're not able to hang stuff on the walls or from the ceiling, then you can get creative with soft furnishings. Things like sofas, rugs, duvets, curtains, can all be used really, really effectively to treat your room. The main areas that you're going to want to focus on, first of all, is the corners. You're going to need some sort of bass traps in the corners. You then need to think about where you're going to be performing. So for example, if you're singing, if you're recording acoustic guitar, you're going to want some treatment either side of where the microphone is, and probably behind you as well, because that's where the microphone is pointing. And then thirdly, you need to consider some acoustic treatment around your listening position and also your speakers. You probably want something behind the speakers, and you probably want something at the side and above your listening position in an ideal world. Now in my room, I have a ton of acoustic panels and ceiling clouds that I made myself for a fraction of the price that you can buy these online. Super simple to do. Just go to your local hardware store, buy some timber and some rock wool panels. I went for 5-inch thick for the rock wool panels, built the frames around them, but then I also went double thickness for the ceiling cloud that's above my speakers and my listening position. You can then go and buy any fabric that you want, that you like the look of, but it must be acoustically transparent. You want the sound waves to go through the fabric. If it's got any sort of coating on it, then that might cause some reflection, which defeats the purpose of having these panels. But like I said, if you're not able to do that, then you need to think about what soft furnishings you can use. Sofas are going to be great at absorbing sound. You can get mattresses and duvets that you can bring around and you can put in different positions. But ultimately, if you're figuring this out for yourself, it's going to take some trial and error and some experimentation. But 100% you do not want to be skipping this step out, because if your room sounds bad, that is going to affect your recordings as well as any mixes that you do out of your room, regardless of what gear you've got. The next thing to figure out once you've got your room treatment sorted is monitoring. This is definitely a place that you don't want to skimp, and you want to spend as much as you can reasonably afford on good monitoring. The reason for this is simple. If you cannot hear an accurate representation of A, what you're recording, B, what you're mixing, then your life is always going to be difficult. You can liken it to painting a picture in the dark, or painting a picture in a room that only contains red light. Yes, you might be able to see what you're doing and you might think it looks really, really good, but then as soon as you take it out of that room and you look at it in the real world, you might be in for some nasty surprises. Well, the same's true with monitoring. If you've got cheap, crappy monitors that don't sound that good or that have a huge bass boost or really scooped in the mids, then every decision that you make when it comes to recording, producing, mixing is going to be influenced by the way those monitors sound. They're not giving you an accurate picture, so when you listen on other systems out in the real world, it's not going to sound the same. Now, with speakers, you do generally get what you pay for. However, there are lots of really, really good affordable monitors as well. I'm using Focal Solo 6BEs. I've used a ton of monitors, some really, really high end, some fairly low end and budget. These are the ones that I've settled on. And the reason is because they translate brilliantly. I can do a mix in here and it will sound exactly how I want it everywhere else that I listen to it. And secondly, I can work on these all day for hours on end, and they're an absolute joy to listen to music on. Some monitors can be really, really fatiguing. A good example of this, in my opinion, is the Yamaha HS series. These are good monitors, don't get me wrong. I've worked on Yamaha HS monitors a few times and I've always been pleased with the results, but I just find them really fatiguing to listen to. After a couple of hours, I find myself needing to take breaks. So do some research, get the best monitors that you can afford and try them out in your room. You might find that some monitors you get on really, really well with, other monitors not so much. That doesn't mean that there's anything necessarily wrong with the monitors. It's just a personal relationship. But the best monitors in the world will be of absolutely no use to you unless you got your acoustic treatment right. If the sound of your room is skewing the response from your monitors, then it doesn't matter how good your monitors are, it's not going to be able to save a bad room. So next, I'm going to actually lump quite a few pieces of equipment together. They're all as important as each other, but not as important as those three things that we've already talked about. And that is your converters, preamps, and microphones. Now, you might decide to get an interface which combines converters and preamps all in one. There's nothing wrong with that at all. You might decide that actually you want to split that. You want to get the best converters that you can get and the best preamps, and that's very often two separate units. But in particular, the converters are part of your monitoring chain that influences how you are hearing the sounds that you're recording. So again, this is something that needs to be good quality. Now, luckily, converter technology has come on insane leaps and bounds over the last few years. 10, 20 years ago, if you bought a cheap audio interface, then yeah, the converters were pretty crappy and you are going to notice that. However, nowadays they are much better. Pretty much any modern interface is going to have really, really good converters, probably to the point where you don't need to worry about it as a weak link. Preamps is fairly similar. Again, 10, 20 years ago, the preamps that came in those cheap interfaces were pretty nasty. They just didn't sound good. They were grainy, and it was going to affect the sound of whatever it is that you're recording. However, nowadays, most interfaces, even the budget ones, come with decent preamps that are at least going to get you a clean signal. However, there's definitely some scope for external preamps that have a particular sound, colour or flavour that you might want. So to give you a rundown of what I'm using, for my interface converters, I'm using a Lynx Aurora N. In my opinion, Lynx makes some of the best converters on the planet. Another reason that I love this interface is because it's future-proof. The way that Lynx have designed it, on the back you have separate modules that you can pop out and put new ones in. So if you get a new computer that has a different connection, for example, if you're going from PC, where you might use USB, to Mac, where you might use Thunderbolt, well, that doesn't mean that you now need a new interface. You can actually put a different card in the back of the Aurora that has a different connection. Similarly, if you find that in the future you need more I/O, that doesn't mean that you need to buy a new interface. I've currently got 8 inputs and 8 outputs, which for now is absolutely fine, that I don't need any more than that. But in the future, if I do need more, I can just buy a card that slots in the back that gives me 16 or 32. In terms of preamps, probably 95% of the time, I'm using a Neve 1073. In my opinion, this is the best preamp on the planet. I do have a couple of other preamps, mainly from Warm Audio, which is an API 312 type circuit. I find that this has a bit more of a push in the mid-range, which can work better sometimes on certain vocalists. Also sounds great on electric guitars where you want that kind of focused mids and tight lows. And it's also got a completely clean preamp option as well. If you're on more of a budget and you need something that's just kind of all in one, then that's absolutely fine. Just go with whatever you can afford right now. The only problem with the really cheap budget interfaces is that you're probably going to find that you'll outgrow them. You probably will get to a point where you want to upgrade it. Whereas if you spend the money right now, you get something that is really good, that is stellar, it'll last you. Now the next thing to consider is your microphones. Now if you're like me, where you're going to be recording other people that are coming to your studio, chances are you're probably going to need a few different flavors and sounds for your microphones. If you're just recording for yourself at home, then you can absolutely get away with just one microphone. At this point, I'm not going to recommend a microphone that you should go out and buy. I've done a full video about how to choose a vocal microphone for yourself, so you should definitely go on my channel and check that out. And I also talk about why asking people on the internet which microphone you should buy is kind of a stupid question and is almost always going to lead to results that are just either not that good or not particularly relevant. So the short answer when it comes to microphones is just go out and buy a bunch that are within your budget that you can then try, get them on sale, return, go to a studio for a couple of hours that have those microphones, sing into them, and then just buy the one that you like the best. Now here at my studio, these are the microphones that I tend to use most often. The first one is a U47. I absolutely love the sound of a 47. Almost always sounds great on male vocals in particular. The next microphone that I use quite a lot is this 251. This is actually from Warm Audio. Warm Audio makes some incredible mics. Considering the price point, they sound amazing. This is also my go-to for most female vocals as well, and it sounds great on acoustic guitars. It's just a really nice, classy sounding microphone. Now, if neither of those two options are working for any reason, then I have these two, what I call my workhorse microphones. This is a 87, again this is by Warm Audio, and this is a 414 by AKG. I can be confident that I can put these in front of pretty much anything and I'm always going to get a good usable sound. They never sound the best on something, there's almost always going to be a better option, but they also never sound bad and you're always going to get a decent result from it. However, good is the enemy of great, and you should always strive to have the best possible microphone that's going to match your source or your voice. So at this point, you've got pretty much everything that you need to get started making incredible sounding records, but you're also going to need a DAW. Obviously, this is an essential bit of kit, but which one you use makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. They all sound exactly the same. The only difference is the workflow and the stock plugins, which obviously will make things sound different. So in terms of your DAW, if you're new to this, try a few out, go and demo some of them, but then just pick the one that you like the best and don't look back. Now, one thing that I will consider absolutely essential if you're a songwriter is having some way of storing and keeping track of all of your songs and projects that you're working on. You see, if you're like most songwriters, chances are you probably don't lack inspiration. In fact, probably quite the opposite. You've probably got a million song ideas rattling around your head or just stored across various apps on your phone, probably the voice notes app that you just hummed into. The problem with this is it is very easy to lose track of everything. Every time you add more ideas into that voice notes app, your old ones just get pushed further and further down. Worst case scenario is you get a new phone and you lose everything. How many great song ideas have gone to waste because of this? Well, I've come up with a solution to this problem. It's called the Songwriters Project Organizer. And if you start using this, you will never lose or forget about a great song idea ever again. With this organizer, you can keep track of absolutely everything, from that initial hook or idea right through to the fully finished, mixed, mastered and released song, with everything else in between. There's a really intuitive app that you can use on any device, no matter where you are. So wherever inspiration strikes, you don't have to wait or rush home and quickly, frantically record it down into your computer. You can do it right there and then on the app. And probably my most favorite feature of the organizer is that you can securely share it with anybody that you choose. So imagine you're collaborating with another artist or working with a producer or mix engineer. You can share your organizer with them and they can update the organizer when they have done their work, and you can literally sit back and watch your project blossom. You can even attach notes, files and web links so that everything is accessible to anybody who needs it. So if you like what I'm talking about here, there is a link in the description below to download the Songwriters Project Organizer, and it is completely 100% free. It makes the whole songwriting process easier, more intuitive, which means that you will finish more songs which is ultimately going to benefit and advance your career as an artist. So click that link, enter your email address, and I'll send it straight to you.